having this whole discussion, and it had to do with the fact that at midnight the dogs bark, and I wanted to claim that maybe in King David's area there weren't any dogs, but Manny did his research, and he emailed me a article from he emailed me a Talmudic statement where the Talmud says that when King David passed away, there were King Solomon was nervous that the dogs would eat King David's body, and they wanted a leniency to be able to move his body from where it was on Shabbos, and normally you wouldn't move a deceased person on Shabbos, but the reason he had asked the Chachamim if he was allowed to, because the dogs might eat his flesh. So we see from there that there were dogs. So that was great proof, Manny. So basically, going back to our discussion then, there seems to be the simple explanation is that their Talmud has two opinions. If the midnight was the time when the dogs would bark, or was it the end of the Ashmura? So we could follow the other opinion, and then at midnight there is no symbol of when the dogs bark, of how, knowing when midnight is. So that's just going back to the previous Gemara. I just wanted to conclude, and I want to thank you, Manny, for looking that up and finding that source. Yasher koyach. Okay, we're going to now open up our Gemaras. We are holding on page Daled Amud Aleph, page Daled, page 4, side A. Some of you have the different prints, but you should be able to find page 4, side A, or Daf Daled Amud Aleph. I should also mention that yesterday we learned, not yesterday, on Friday. On Friday we learned about the different individuals that were approached before the Jewish people went to war, and we mentioned a verse from Divrei Hayamim about Achitophel, Benayo ben Yehoyada, of Yasser, and Yoav, these four individuals. Now, we explained the Gemara according to Rashi. According to Rashi, that's the simple way of explaining the Gemara. However, there is another explanation, which is Taisvis. And Taisvis, according to the way Taisvis learns, it actually changes things around a drop. He has a different girsa. Of course, he has a different text, so that because of the different text, he has a few questions on Rashi, and ultimately he learns that it's not Benayahu ben Yehoyada, it's actually Yehoyada ben Benayahu, and he finds a different it's a different verse, and he also learns that Kresi and Plesi is referring to the Sanhedrin, not referring to the Kohen Gadol. And this is Howard brought this up yesterday, and that's actually why I want to mention it, that it actually follows the logic of what you had mentioned, Howard, that it sounded like Kresi and Plesi is referring to Benayahu ben Yehoyada, which Taisvis has a different text. It's Yehoyada ben Benayahu. And instead of saying the word al means before, he's translating it that al means he's in charge of the Kresi and Plesi, and that's referring to the verdict of the Sanhedrin. So that's the way Taisvis learns. But ultimately, the idea is that King David would get up early, and at a certain point, he would learn Torah, and afterwards, they would figure out the economy issues were dealt with. And that's where—
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So it's nice to always find sources for everyone. So, that's Taisvis's explanation here, and his question on Rashi had to do with the fact that Evyasar was the Kohen Gadol, and no one needs proof to that. So because of that, he switches it around. He also has a question because the verse that he found, the verse of in Divrei Yomim seems to say the opposite. So ultimately, he has another shot. Okay, so we're up to Rabbi Zera. No, we're actually up to a few lines before that. Amar Reb Yitzchak bar Ada, which is 6 lines down from the top of the page. I'm just going to close my door because I hear a little background noise. Reb Yitzchak, the son of Ada, the Amrila, Amar Reb Yitzchak, and some say Reb Yitzchak berei de Ravidi, the son of Ravidi. Mikra, what is the source for this? Mikra, what is the verse? And the verse, the Gemara answers, the verse is from Tehillim. Ura chavoidi, ura hanevel v'chinor or ira shachar. That the verse that David HaMelech would wake up early is that I awaken my kavod. In other words, I don't give in to my honor. I don't allow the sleep to sleep like other kings would sleep, and they would enjoy their honor by sleeping in. But King David would get up extra early, so he would awaken the kavod, the honor that he could have enjoyed his sleep more like the other kings. And Ura hanevel v'chinar ira shachar, and the navel and kinar awaken him, and he awakens the morning, means he gets up before other kings get up. He gets up before the morning comes in. So that's the source of these points. Actually, Rashi says the Gemara was asking, what's the source that King David had a harp on top of his bed? And the source the Gemara is bringing is to prove that hanevel v'chinor, ura hanevel v'chinor, that the navel and chinor wake me up. So that's the source that he had a harp in front of his bed. So for those that weren't that weren't following, that weren't with us for the previous few sessions, the Gemara here concludes that King David had a harp on top of his bed, and that would wake him up at midnight. And the source of it is a verse in Tehillim. So that's the previous Gemara. We're now starting a new piece. It's connected, but it's a new paragraph. Does anyone have any questions?
Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi, did you mention that Rabbi Sachs passed away?
Yeah, we mentioned it yesterday. Yes, very sad.
Oh.
Very sad.
Yeah, very sad.
Okay, we're now about 10 lines from the top of the page. The last word on the line in my print is Rebbe. Rebbe Zera Amar. Rebbe Zera says, Maisha liyolam havayada. Maisha really knew when midnight is. David nami havayada. David also knew when midnight was. So the Gemara is discussing the difference between Maisha and David, because we find that Maisha did not want to tell Pharaoh that the smiting of the firstborn is going to happen at midnight. Maisha didn't want to say that. He said it's going to be around midnight. And David seemed to be very comfortable saying that he wakes up exactly at midnight. And so the Gemara was disturbed by this difference between Maisha and David, especially because we know that Maisha is the prophet, the highest level prophet of all of Klal Yisrael. Like come be Yisrael, Navi Kamaisha. No one reached the level of Maisha. And so how could it be that Maisha didn't know when midnight is? Because Maisha said around midnight, and King David is the one who seems to know better then Maisha, and King David says exactly at midnight. That seems surprising. Okay, Kindala, could you finish? Take what you need and then go out of the room. So that's the Gemara. The Gemara is dealing with that issue, and the previous Gemara we just concluded mentioned that there's a reason why King David knew when midnight was, and that the reason was because he had this harp on top of his bed. But now the Gemara wants to say that both of them knew exactly when midnight is, and therefore it's not a question. It's not a question of why didn't Maisha know and David did know. That's not a question, because really Maisha knew also. So the question is, V'kivan did David have a yada, and since David did know when midnight is, kinar lamale. Why did he need a harp on top of his bed? Basically, the Gemara said that David HaMelech had a harp on top of his bed, and when the wind, there's a certain wind that blows, that starts blowing at midnight. It's called the northern wind. And since it starts blowing at midnight, it would wake him up. He would know, and he would know. Shouldn't give away the answer. Take back. I didn't say that it would wake him up. I just said he would know when midnight is because he would hear the sound of this northern wind blowing, and that's how he knew when midnight. That the Gemara said that's how he knew when midnight is. But now the Gemara is saying that even Maisha knew when midnight is. So Maisha knew when midnight is. David HaMelech knew when midnight is. So why did David HaMelech need this harp? He probably knew, just like Maisha knew. So the Gemara says la'asure mishnase. He needed the harp to wake him up. In other words, if he was awake, he would know when midnight is. But since he wasn't awake, then he needed to be awakened to know when. He needed not to know. He needed the harp to wake him up, because even though if he was up, he would know when midnight is, but it wouldn't in his sleep. He wouldn't know when midnight is, and therefore the harp was simply to wake him up at midnight.
Rabbi Smith.
Yes.
How does the harp wake up a person at a specific time? From where do we know that?
So there is a Gemara in Baba Basra that says that the winds would start blowing at certain times in the day, and that would be the source that there was a north wind that started blowing at midnight. And so King David, being very talented, was able to build some type of a mechanism that was able to be used to know when midnight, to wake him up, or to know when midnight is, based on the two explanations of the Gemara.
Otherwise, I only know that you could. The only time that a harp plays is pluck the string.
Say that one more time.
A person, anybody, only knows, according to the natural course of events, that a harp plays only when you pluck the strings. Otherwise,
right. So there is a discussion if this was really a miraculous thing, or he somehow was able to do it it was done physically. They do discuss this in the commentaries. Miranda, yes.
Yeah, I've seen some things like these small harps that have little things dangling in front of it that have weights on them. And when a breeze comes by, or when you move a door or something, it kind of plays on the strings. I don't know if that's what he did, but I've seen those on people's doors.
Right.
That helps. I don't know. I don't know if that's halakhically correct, but anyway.
No, that sounds like a great explanation. That sounds great.
Rabbi Smith?
Yeah.
So if David HaMelech awakened at midnight, it means the recitation of whatever he did, prayers or tefillas, were recited post middle of the night. So middle of the night, to conclude that he did his recitation or prayers in the middle of the night, it must refer to a gap of time, as opposed to, in other words, we're establishing the middle of the night for the entire watch.
So
Otherwise, his tefillot were post middle of the night.
so you're asking a question because it takes someone after they wake up, it takes them time to get ready.
Well,
Is that what your question is?
Middle of the night is an instant of time.
Right.
It's not a gap of time. So unless we're applying a different definition.
Well, so what you're really asking is, when we speak about auspicious times, is it really that, does it have to be exactly at that second of where midnight, where the first half of the night ends, and exactly at that second, the next half of the night begins? Or is it more of a gap of time around that area, around that time of midnight is the auspicious time? That's basically what you're asking. Almost
Correct.
like
it would be similar to the Yetzias Mitzrayim when Hashem came down. Did everybody just drop dead? And were all the idols destroyed at the instant of midnight, or was it during the watch?
either they drop dead exactly at midnight, or what's the other option?
Or they drop, or the passing of the firstborn of the Egyptians occurred over a period of time during that watch.
Well, it definitely seems from the simple understanding is that it was exactly at midnight. They all died.
Is that the interpretation in the?
That's definitely the meaning. The question that you're asking is a very good question about about King David. Because it brings up a number of issues. Number one is if a person is not supposed to. On the one hand, it says you're supposed to get up like a lion, wake up like a lion. On the other hand, it also says that you're not supposed to jump up the first second because that's dangerous. So you're supposed to, you're supposed to wait a moment and then get up. So even if it awakened him at midnight, he's still not supposed to jump up like a lion immediately. He's supposed to wait a moment and then jump up, which would mean he would miss the unique moment of midnight to say those prayers. So that's so that's definitely and then the question is, he would also have to recite the morning blessings or the blessings on the Torah, and that also gets into the question of his sleeping before midnight being that he slept, according to different opinions. If he slept until midnight, like he dozed off like a horse, and that the question is that the time period, the time frame for a person to be obligated in washing Negelwasser, or did he sleep less than what a horse? In other words, there is a question as to the sleeping of a horse, dozing off like a horse, is applicable halachically, because that amount of time of sleeping like a horse is the amount of time that we consider that a substantial time for sleeping, with regard to I think with regard to washing Negelwasser, if a person would sleep that amount of time. And that amount of time is questionable how long it is, because the sleeping of the dozing off of a horse is called 60 breaths. Now, does that mean human breaths? Now, a person breathes 1,080 breaths in an hour. And when we say a horse breathes 60 breaths, does that mean 60 human breaths? Or does that mean horse breaths? So the opinions, the rabbis argue about this, the commentaries, and it comes out that according to some opinions, it's a few minutes. The amount of time it would take to sleep, the dozing off of a horse is a few minutes. According to the other opinion, it actually ends up being a half hour. So based on those different opinions, it would create question as to how long would be considered when a person sleeps, being obligated to wash negavasser, having, and possibly that would also be connected to the laws of reciting the blessing on the Torah, because once you sleep a certain sleep, that would be cause you to conclude your blessing on the Torah from yesterday, and would obligate you to bless the Torah at another time. And possibly that would mean that King David should have made the Berchas HaTorah, the blessing on the Torah, at midnight, which would mean that he started doing his studies a little afterwards. So again, all getting back to this idea that it sounds like midnight was the auspicious time, and it sounds like it wasn't just midnight, it was a continuation of time after midnight. But I think you're asking a very valid question, because if midnight is such an auspicious time and he only, people want to do it, why wouldn't he want to do the entire midnight and have the alarm wake him up a little earlier than midnight? In this way, he would be able to encompass the entire time that's auspicious with his prayers. And the only thing I could say is maybe there was no way of having an alarm clock do that, because the wind would start at midnight. That was his only option. So he would miss out on a few minutes. But he didn't have a way to have him wake up exactly or a few minutes before midnight so that he could get the full amount. But it does sound from this Gemara, and that's a good point that you're making, man. You like that it's not just midnight. It actually involves the entire time is auspicious. I'll tell you what's interesting is this brings up another story in the Talmud that where it mentions that Bilam knew exactly when to curse the Jewish people, and the way he knew was he knew exactly when Hashem gets angry. It says kirega biyapoi, Hashem gets angry for an exact split second. So he knew exactly when that split second was, and he was able to he was able to curse people exactly at that split second. So one of the questions that's asked on that is, how can you curse people in a split second? Saying a few words, it takes much longer than a split second. So if Hashem gets angry for a split second, he could start saying his curse then, but what about his main curse is not going to be until he says another 10 words. So how did Bilam curse and the answer that's given there is that if you start at the right moment, it's everything that was done afterwards is included in that moment. In other words, Hashem sees what you're doing for afterwards. And maybe you could say the same thing here, that once, you're waking up to study Torah and to do these prayers, so everything you do afterwards is considered as the moment that is considered at the chatzos that you've made it for the chatzos, because you started at the right moment. You did your maidani and you said you woke up and you said your brachas and you're waking up just for this moment. So possibly you could say, based on that logic, of Bilam being able to curse the Yidden, since he started at the right moment, he was able to continue saying his curse, and that worked. It was considered that he made it within that auspicious time. So maybe you could say the same thing here, that since you started at the auspicious time, it's considered that whatever you did afterwards is connected to that auspicious time, and it all falls into that level. So that might answer that. Maybe is a better answer. That's interesting.
Rabbi?
Yes, Yehuda.
But Bilam never cursed the Jewish people.
Right. He wanted to curse them, and that was his trick, but he wasn't able to. And the reason he wasn't able to was because in those days that he tried to curse the Yidden, Hashem did not even get angry for a split second. So Hashem sort of tricked him. So in other words, he knew exactly when Hashem, no one else knows when Hashem exactly gets angry. Every day Hashem gets angry for like a split second. No one knows when that time is. Bilam would know when that is. And Hashem said, you know what? He's trying to curse you. Today, I'm not getting angry. Hashem said, not even for a split second. So Hashem didn't get angry a split second, so he was unable to curse us. But he did. But he planned. The question is, how did he plan on cursing us, and how did he curse other people if it's only a split second? And that is the explanation I gave. Is on that question.
Right.
He could have even thought to curse us if he only has a split second. Okay, Yehuda?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Hello?
Yeah, any other questions? Okay, so we are, let's see, where are we holding now? So Maisha and David both knew when midnight is. David needed a kinar, a harp, in order to wake him up, but not to know when midnight is. He would have known anyway. I'm not sure what the Gemara is basing this on. How would he have known? How would they have known anyway? I'm wondering if it's possible they would have known because they had vision. They could see the angels switching gear in heaven. So maybe that's how they knew. Just a thought. But anyway, both of them knew, according to this Gemara, both of them knew exactly when midnight is. I'm going to mute everyone because I hear some background noise. And if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself. So they both knew when midnight is. He needed this for an alarm clock. He needed the harp. And the question is, so why did Maisha say around midnight if Maisha also knew when midnight is? V'kivan de Maisha have a yada. Since Maisha knew when midnight is, lama leila meimar kachatzois. Why did he have to say like around midnight? Why didn't he say exactly at midnight? So the Gemara answers, Maisha kasavar, Maisha thought, Shema yitu atstadnine paroi, maybe Paroi's stargazers will make a mistake. And v'yoimru, and they will say, Maisha badoihu, Maisha is a liar. And therefore, Maisha didn't want to give them any opportunity to blame, some mistake on him and not take the full power of what's happening. Maisha wanted them to feel the full brunt of what's going on and that everything came true that Hashem said. And even if one slight thing would go wrong, they'll knock the entire claim because one little thing went wrong. They didn't, they think went wrong. It'll remove the power of Hashem's word to them because one small thing didn't happen the way they thought. And so Maisha didn't want to do that, and therefore he just said around midnight, so they won't be able to blame it, to blame Maisha that he made a mistake and he was wrong and not everything of Hashem is right. It's very interesting. What you see here is how people can have the greatest miracles happen to them, but one thing doesn't happen the way they want, and they're going to knock the entire greatness of Hashem because something, some small little thing didn't happen. A quarter of Egypt died in that night, and Hashem told them that it's going to happen. And all of a sudden, it wasn't exactly at midnight. They're going to start claiming there's no Eibishter. They're going to claim, it's not true, but there's no such thing as Hashem. One little thing didn't happen exactly at midnight. It happened 5 minutes later in their eyes. They're wrong, but they think that way. They're going to knock the entire, you see how people are, that it's so easy. The evil inclination is so powerful, actually. The evil inclination has so much power that he's able to convince us not to be inspired. It's unbelievable that we wouldn't be inspired because it was a few minutes off. Anyway, that's what Maisha was nervous of, and he knew that that's how powerful the Yetzer Hara is. He was afraid, and he therefore said kachatzois around midnight. The Amar Mar, because Master said, and this is a statement of the Talmud, Lamed l'shayncha, you should teach your tongue, loymar, to say, Eini yoidea, I don't know. Shema tispade v'soiches, maybe you will lie and get caught, or maybe you will make a mistake and get caught. And that's the Gemara basically tells us that it's important to better say you don't know than to say you do know, and people will, and possibly you'll make a mistake, or possibly people will think you made a mistake. So that's the advice. This is in Masechta Derech Eretz. Rashi tells us that it's advice to how to proper etiquette, proper way of social, information, how to deal socially with other people. It's important to often say, better to say I don't know. So that's this piece of Gemara. That's this answer, I should say, of Gemara, Reb Zera. Now, we had Reb Zera before. Reb Zera had said until Chatzos, until midnight, David HaMelech would doze off like a horse. From then and onward, he would strengthen himself like a lion. And that flows with this idea, because he was sleeping, dozing off. He needed to wake up from his dozing off. So that's Reb Zera's explanation. I'm hearing some background noise. Can you hear me clearly, or am I breaking up? I'm breaking up.
I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay.
There was a little noise, a little breakup, but mostly fine.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Okay, so now comes Rav Ashi. We're on the first wide line in the regular print of the Talmud. The first wide line, Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi says, "Bepalgo urta detleisar nagi arbesar." That Maisha is exactly at midnight, Palga Urta, halfway through the night of the 13th, Nagi Arbesar, which the next day would be the 14th, Havakoi, he was standing. And he's telling Paroi that around midnight, he's telling Paroi that Kachatzois, like at midnight, tomorrow night is going to be the death of the smiting of the firstborn. So he wasn't really saying around midnight. What he really was saying was similar to tonight is what's going to happen tomorrow night. So the chaf, kachatzos, doesn't mean approximately midnight. It means like tonight, exactly midnight. That's what's going to happen tomorrow night. Kachatzos. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this Vachi Kamar Maisha li Yisrael. This is what Maisha told the Yidden. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. L'machar kachatzois halayla, tomorrow, like midnight tonight, ki ha'idna ani yotze b'seich Mitzrayim. I am going, just like now, Ani yotze b'seich Mitzrayim, I am going amongst Egypt and going to smite the firstborn. And so this answer is explaining that it doesn't mean around midnight, it means exactly at midnight. And the reason it has a chaf is because he's comparing it to right now, at midnight now. That's how it's going to be exactly the next night. Kachatzois. I should say that there's something that bothers me about this Gemara. It says that this is what Maisha told the Yidden. And really, Maisha, in the Chumash, it says Maisha is telling Pharaoh. Maisha tells Pharaoh this statement. Not really, he doesn't tell the Yidden. I didn't look it up, so I don't know if any of the commentaries talk about it, but some of you might have an art scroll or a Koran. I wonder if they say anything about that. If on the side you might have something that mentions this question. Nothing? No one sees anything? Okay.
It doesn't say who he said it to. In the Steinsaltz, it just says he pronounced his prophecy. But
Uh-huh.
it doesn't say to whom.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Mel, were you saying something? Oh, I can't hear you. I don't know why. Even though we can't hear you. Now, try to unmute yourself now. Mel, you're muted for some reason. Oh.
There it is. Can you hear me?
Now we can. Yes, right now.
No, no. In the art scroll, it happens to mention about that Rashi says about the time that he says approximately. That Rashi says it's approximately at about, because he points out that the astrologers from Paro might also had their own calculations.
And they might make mistakes, right? That was the previous Gemara. But I'm doing the next Gemara on the next statement, which is Rav Ashi's statement, which is the next paragraph. On that Gemara, it says, this is what Maisha told the Yidden. And I'm questioning that it really was Maisha telling Paroi, because he was standing in front of Paroi.
Right. So what was the question? That he was asking Paro or making a statement?
He was making a statement to Paroi, not to the Yidden, but the Gemara says he's making the statement to the Yidden. So that's why I was wondering if any of the commentaries mentioned an explanation on that. Okay. Well, we're going to continue. We're at the 2 dots. Oh, the time. Okay. Not much time, but we'll do let's try to do a line or two. Okay. LeDavid Shamra Nafshi. To David, this is a psalm in Tehillim. It says, Shamra Nafshi, that David HaMelech said, watch my soul, ki chassid ani, because I am a chassid. So David was asking Hashem for salvation, for safety, for protection, because he's a chassid. So Levi and Reb Yitzchak, they both tried to explain what does it mean that David HaMelech said, I am a chassid. Chad Amar, one of these 2 rabbis explained, Kach Amar David lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what David said before Hashem. Rabbeinu Shalayla, Master of the universe. Loi chassid ani? Am I not a chassid? Am I not a pious person? Shekol Malchei, all the kings of Mizrach and Ma'arav, of East and West. Yeshenim, they sleep. They all sleep ad shalosh shois, until 3 hours of the day. Va'ani, but I, chatzois laila akum, at midnight I get up, lahoidai slucha, to praise you. So I get up at midnight to praise you. I am a chassid. V'idach, the other rabbi explained it. Kach amar David lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what David said before Hashem. Rabbeinu Shalayla, Master of the universe. Loi chassid ani, am I not a chassid? Shekol malchei Mizrach u'Ma'arav, all the kings of the east and of the west. Yoishvim agudois b'chvoidam. They sit in their groups in great honor. And va'ani, but me, yadai meluchlachos, my hands are dirtied. B'dam, with blood, uveshfir, and with miscarriages, uveshilya, and with sacks. The sack of that the baby grows in. Kadei, in order, why are my hands dirty with these things? Kadei, in order, lataher, to purify Isha labaila, a woman to her husband. So King David was saying that I don't take advantage of being king and enjoy the pleasures that the other kings enjoy. Instead, I am totally given over to my people to try to help even their individual issues. Like, for example, a woman who is questionable if she has given birth, if she's considered a tameh, impure with the impurity of giving birth, or if not. And there are different colors of blood that, number one, if a woman sees a stain of a different color, she's not considered a nida or a zava. And then additionally, if she gives birth, if the miscarriage was a certain size, or depending on how it looks, it could be that it's not considered tameh, impure with giving birth. It's just impure with the nida, which is only a week and not 2 weeks. And with the shilya, the Gemara says that ein shilya b'loy valad. You can't have a sack without having a baby. So he would have to judge if that's considered. If it's a sack, that means that there was a baby in it, and basically he tried to help out the women to be able to not be impure, and that is how he felt that he's a chassid, because he involves himself with help with purifying women